Put yourself in our shoes. Think of the abuse.
We want to remember the ones who didn't make it out as well.
Every child matters.
A sea of orange floods downtown Winnipeg as people gather to mark National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, also known as Orange Shirt Day. Good evening. Thank you for being with us tonight. Events were held right across Manitoba today. We will start at the Forks, where hundreds gathered for a healing walk that wound its way through downtown Winnipeg this morning. That is where we find the CBC's Mike Arsenault. Mike, walk us through the day.
Well, Riley, here at the Forks, people are starting to trickle out now, but earlier this place was filled with people in orange shirts. Supporters I spoke with say they're here to honor and remember the kids who never came home. And one survivor I spoke with says the walk helps her to heal from the lasting trauma of residential school.
A convoy of motorcycles revved their engines and led the way for the 4th annual Healing Walk on Orange Shirt Day. Patty Crofton wore her jingle dress and waved as the crowd passed through the Forks. Crofton is a residential school survivor and a 60s scoop survivor. She says this day helps her to overcome her past traumas.
We all come together and we're all healing together as one. And that's what we need. We need more understanding out there.
The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, or Orange Shirt Day, honors the survivors of residential schools and remembers the children who never made it home. Supporters and survivors walked side by side and made their way towards Main Street. Crofton says the day is a chance for everyone to reflect.
Put yourself in our shoes. Imagine what we went through, the pain, the hurt, and never seeing your parents. That's the worst thing, is being taken away from your parents.
Chief Derek Niepanak was leading the healing walk on his motorcycle. He says today is a day for all people to reflect on the traumas of the past.
It's not a celebration, it's a commemoration, and we're here to think about our family members and our ancestors who are here before us and went through these things.
The crowd made their way inside the RBC Centre. The grand entry was partially led by Premier Wab Kinew, whose father was a residential school survivor. This is the first official Orange Shirt Day since the NDP government established it as a provincial statutory holiday. Kinew says it gives people time to reflect.
And that means that every child, every parent, every family has the time today to honor the survivors, honor the parents left behind, honor the children who never came home,
and to honor people like Crofton. She says the message today is simple.
It's all about healing and loving one another. Acceptance is what I wanted to say.
Now, the Healing Walk wasn't the only event today that honored residential school survivors. The Manitoba Museum for Human Rights had free admission today so people could learn about the lasting legacy of residential schools in Canada. And here at the Forks, there will be events going on until 10 p.m. tonight.
Thank you, Mike. CBC's Mike Arsenault live from the Forks this evening. Well, to Brandon now, where high winds and a little bit of rain didn't dampen Orange Shirt Day in Westman. Hundreds walked from Brandon's Riverbank Discovery Centre to the former site of the Brandon Residential School. Visitors could also view a gallery of photos from residential schools. People involved in today's event hope people better understand why Orange Shirt Day matters.
Recognize of how much our people have suffered in the past. I know there was some discrimination when all this first started, and people were just saying get over it. But this gives our people something to look forward to every year.
I think it's important for children especially to be able to know our history and reflect on Canada and how we came to be today, and just give them a different perspective than the one that you see on social media and mainstream media.
Brandon's Truth and Reconciliation Week runs through Friday. Ceremonies were also held in Ottawa today. People walked a memorial cloth with the names of children known to have died at residential schools through the crowd. Olivia Stefanovic brings us that story.
In the shadow of the buildings where Canada's residential school policy was created and enforced, a nation came to remember. Honoring the thousands of children who never returned from the institutions they were forced to attend.
There's no forgiving, not for me.
Though the pain raw, survivors shared their stories.
According to them, we were dirty Indians. They cut our hair. They threw us in the bathtub because wash the Indianness out of us, scrubbing us. It didn't work.
Spoken in languages forbidden from residential schools.
Every child matters. We honor the resilience of survivors who continue to bravely share their stories so that we may learn. In their stories, there is unspeakable pain, but there is also tremendous courage and determination to emerge into healing and light.
The Prime Minister marked the day by speaking to youth in Nunavut Northwest Territories.
Let's all understand that the true journey of reconciliation will take decades.
But there are calls for the federal government to do more.
I think what people need to understand is the price we paid as children.
Survivors are demanding increased stable resources to search for possible graves.
Why should we have to beg money from the very entities that conducted this atrocity?
As a government, we've been with survivors from day one.
The Crown Indigenous Relations Minister says the government is responding to survivors' concerns by restoring funding for investigations.
John was killed in residential school. There was never really any investigation because this kind of still remains a mystery.
But for survivors and their families, there's still a long journey to healing.
We don't really know how many of these children died.
And the full truth of this history still felt today. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Survivors of a former residential school in Winnipeg are sharing their experiences and stories with each other. The two-day reunion for students of Assiniboia Residential School had its largest turnout on its third run. Some of the former students toured the school grounds for the first time yesterday. And as CBC's Arturo Chang reports, for some, the moment was bittersweet.
How do you feel seeing your picture?
Amazing. Awesome. Unbelievable.
Margaret Mercer makes an unexpected discovery. A photo of herself from 60 years ago, now part of a memorial honoring her and other survivors.
A picture of me and my best friend.
She attended Assiniboia as a teen, but at 76, she says she can still remember everything.
My sister and them to leave for me to put me on a train to come to Winnipeg here. It was something I don't want to go through again. As a little girl, you were just lost.
Mercer and 67 other survivors of the Assiniboia Residential School met in Winnipeg yesterday. They toured their former school grounds and looked up their names on the monument honoring them.
I try and listen all the time, that's how I survive, I guess, Yeah, listen to the rules and things like that.
More than 800 Indigenous youth attended the residential school in South Winnipeg between the late 50s and early 70s. This is their first official reunion. Mabel Horton is one of the main people behind the event. She attended Assiniboia for about 7 years.
Lots of them expressed their pain because we didn't know all the stories and they didn't talk about it till maybe sometimes some just lately have been talking about it. The different treatments we got.
I know I didn't trust them. Trust the priests and nuns. I didn't trust them at all.
Carol Starr said she didn't feel safe at school. With no way of communicating home, one day she just decided to walk away. Martina Fisher, her lifelong friend, also went to Assiniboia. She says she was forced to assimilate into a different culture.
I couldn't be close to my brothers. I was scared to hug them. We had to relearn all that after we became parents, and those are the things that still hurt us.
The plan is to continue these reunions every year. Arturo Chang, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, stories like these can be difficult for some. A reminder that there is help. The Indian Residential School Crisis Line can be reached 24 hours a day. That number is on your screen at 1-866-925-4419. And we'll bring you more on National Day for Truth and Reconciliation a bit later in the show. But first to some other news. And the wind today, thousands of Manitobans woke up without power and many are still in the dark this evening. Manitoba Hydro says crews will work through the night to restore power. The CBC's Rosanna Hempel has more on this blustery day.
I only see a couple scratches so far.
Julian Machado started his day dealing with this.
I could have been a lot worse, could have smashed the whole car.
His bumper and hood are scratched from a branch that crashed onto his West End street overnight.
Seeing that it's just on the side is a little bit better. It's less of a headache, but still, again, it sucks.
Manitoba Hydro crews were out fixing power lines in neighborhoods across the city. Hydro says high winds caused power outages for thousands of people in southern Manitoba, including Winnipeg. Jolene Head, who lives in St. Boniface, has been up since 3:30 this morning.
From my bedroom, I saw a bright flash of green light and buzzing. Could hear and feel buzzing.
Head wasn't expecting to spend her day without power. At one point, close to 7,000 people in and around Winnipeg were in the same situation.
I was hoping to be able to reflect and think about the significance of the day, but hopefully I'll still be able to do that a little bit later on. I'd like to have a shower, though. You could see the live wire on the ground sparking.
Head's neighbor, Hortense Ngumpsi, has also been up for most of the night. Her children are home from school with questions.
They start asking me, Mom, what are we going to do today? How are we going to eat? I'm like, I don't know. I heard the younger say, oh, we can do Monopoly. I know two of them, they're going to be reading. But the other, they are so like, Mom, we need internet, we need.
Extra hydro crews have been called in and power was back for some people within hours. Machado hopes he doesn't have to wait too long for his cleanup. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, that leads us to a look at your weather, and boy, oh boy, those winds still remain strong and will for the next several hours yet. Here's a look at some of your current wind speeds right now. You can see, particularly through the Brandon area, winds gusting at almost 80 this hour, in the 70s to the Dauphin region, gusting close to 60 in Winnipeg this hour. We did see gusts in the Brandon and Dauphin regions closer to 100 earlier in the day today. That has prompted a wind warning, which remains in place for much of Westman, through the Parkland region, and even through most of south central Manitoba. It will remain breezy through the evening hours tonight. We'll see winds very quickly through the evening into the overnight period, dying off a little bit though. So not as windy, but still a bit gusty this evening. We do have a frost advisory in place for the western edge of the province, through the Parkland region, Verdun through Roblin, Russell into the southwest corner of Manitoba. We could see temperatures dipping close to freezing tonight, and we also have a rainfall warning in place for the Hudson Bay coast and Dooley Lake. Could see up to 40 millimeters of rain and wind gusts to 90 kilometers an hour. This all because of an area of low pressure that has been moving through central and northern Manitoba. A cold front along with that has really been dragging our temperatures down to about 12 degrees at the moment in Winnipeg. And as we get through the evening, we'll see the winds lightening up a little bit, but that area of low pressure still bringing some rain and even some light snow possibly to parts of the north as we get through Tuesday. Tomorrow, a general mix of sun and cloud, and that's what we get for the next couple days. Maybe a few scattered showers here and there as we head into the day on Wednesday. In terms of rainfall, we could see up to another 20 to 30 millimeters for the Hudson Bay coast in particular, maybe another 10 to 15 for places like Thompson through the Gillam region, another 2 to 3 through Norway House and Island Lake. Tonight, 2 degrees in Brandon overnight, 3 in Swan River, down to 2 in Thompson. Winnipeg, we're looking at a low of 6 overnight tonight, 16 tomorrow, south winds gusting to 40. And look at Thursday and Friday, we have a risk of frost because those temperatures sure dipping close to the freezing mark. And what a reality check as we head into the first week of October. 6 Manitobans were honored at the Fallen Firefighter Memorial Ceremony over the weekend. Preston Heinbigner's name was one of those that was etched onto the downtown Winnipeg Memorial for Fallen Firefighters. He died by suicide this past April, and his death was declared a line of duty death. The president of the United Firefighters of Winnipeg says the memorial serves an opportunity to acknowledge the sacrifices made by fallen firefighters.
I wish there wasn't any names on that wall, but at the same time, that's the reality we live in, so we acknowledge. It drums up a lot of emotions. These are guys I made pizza with. These are guys I pulled hose over snowbanks with, right? They're not just names on the wall, they're personalities and whatnot. So to see their loved ones here today and share that moment, very, very important.
The Manitoba government committed to funding 3 mental health counselors in the wake of Heinbigner's death. Still to come, our coverage of National Day for Truth and Reconciliation continues. 2 generations of Anishinaabe family discuss the state of reconciliation and where we go from here. Plus this.
Students in a remote community reflect on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. I'm Josh Crabb in Poplar River First Nation. I'll show you how students here are learning about the impacts of the residential school system.
In the week leading up to the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, students in a remote community reflected on its importance. Like other First Nations, people in Poplar River on the east side of Lake Winnipeg have been affected by the intergenerational trauma caused by the residential school system. The CBC's Josh Crabb spoke with students in Poplar River about what the day means to them.
Truth and Reconciliation is a day to remember those who lost their lives and those who were left traumatized.
17-year-old Nancy Sanderson shares a portion of her essay. It's about why the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is an important day for people to honor survivors and remember those who never returned home.
I think that they should understand the trauma that other people, our elders, went through.
She's among more than 400 students who go to the school in Poplar River First Nation, 450 kilometers north of Winnipeg. Students here worked on coloring orange shirts, making posters, while older students like Keisha Douglas wrote essays to reflect on truth and reconciliation.
It's important to remember all the people that, like, what they went through during the tough times of residential schools.
Students here have previously heard from residential school survivors from Poplar River First Nation. Some have also heard stories shared by their family members. Hearing those experiences is helping them reflect on the importance of truth and reconciliation. Sarah Hudson wrote about the need for programs to help people deal with addictions who use substances to cope with the trauma.
It just recognizes, acknowledges our elders and the pain that we still feel as like a whole people, because the communities, the families are still experiencing like the pain.
The school's acting principal, Bethany Cardiff, says many students have family who attended the schools.
So it's good to keep it in the forefront because yes, it's happened in the past, but it's having trauma, it's affecting students even today in their family lives.
Grade 1 teacher Deborah Bittern leans on children's literature to help the younger kids read and relate to residential schools, turning to a book about Phyllis Webstad, whose story led to the creation of Orange Shirt Day.
We sat down and I talked about it, and we made a little booklet about Phyllis and her orange shirt. And I told them she was exactly your age in grade 1 when she was taken away.
She says it can be a difficult topic to teach, but one that's resonating with students of all ages. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Poplar River First Nation.
A quieter gathering was held today at the Indigenous Peoples Garden at the Leaf in Assiniboia Park. Indigenous educator Cree Crowchild shared tobacco teachings and ceremonies around what he called a reconciliation fire. He spoke to the CBC's Karen Pauls.
Hello, my name is Cree Crowchild. Tanse Bonjour Anin. Cree Crowchild. I come from Treaty 6 area, Fishing Lake. I carry 2 spirit names, the one who brings light and 4 horses running. Today is about not just remembering those students who didn't make it home from school, but praying and thinking about those ones that are still carrying the trauma from residential schools. And today is about bringing people together just to understand that we actually now have a voice and a platform to speak to each other with kindness and understanding, and most importantly with humility. Humility, as I said before, is the gateway to reconciliation. My fear as an Indigenous person is that we don't want to lose sight of why this day is very special. It's not a long weekend to go to the lake. That's great that we have a holiday, but not to lose sight of why we're here. Children never made it home. It's great to see the symbolism of the orange shirt, or even when we have the red dress. We need to acknowledge those things daily, because the moment we just define it as a moment in time, that's all it ever will be, is a moment in time. Reconciliation is 365 days a year. At the end of our ceremony today, that fire that you see burning is, to me, is a reconciliation fire. And people ask me all the time, is it a sacred fire? It's sacred to everybody. A fire is sacred. The embers that are in that fire right now represent our people. And as our people will never go extinct, because those embers in that fire will never go away. That represents the children who didn't come home. And their spirit is going to live forever. So when we put that tobacco into the fire, we're giving an offering to the Creator or whatever we believe in, and praying for those little ones. And praying for the little ones who are now old ones, that are marching with us and reminding us that education is a powerful tool. Make which.
Well, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation has been called a day for hope, reflection, and also awareness. The CBC's Marcy Marcusa sat down with 2 generations of a Manitoba family to find out what that means to them. Miing Linklater is 50 years old and a long-time urban Indigenous community volunteer in Winnipeg. And his 26-year-old son, Ondeg Muldrew, is an assistant professor of anthropology at the University of Winnipeg, who also teaches Anishinaabe. They are from Lac Seul First Nation.
What do you hope, Ondeg, that people think about on Truth and Reconciliation Day?
Well, it's understanding, what the truths are. Again, going back to, what's the history, but more concretely, just where do we go from there?
I believe we need to establish a vision that says, you know what, First Nations, Indigenous peoples need to have the opportunities to have Sunday dinner together. The grandparents are there, you have cousins coming in, and it's just a matter that, it's just establishing a healthy household that mainstream Canadians do on a regular basis. But for those folks that, First Nations families that, are struggling to make ends meet, they don't have that opportunity. It's not revolution, it's evolution. As I've said over the number of years, I've said to Ondeg that we come from a tough family, we come from a tough community, we've experienced genocide, we've experienced all of these bad things. It doesn't make us resilient. I hate that word, but we are a tough people.
Just the other day, actually, I went to a naming ceremony for a little kid that was a week old. So that was really emotional to think about too. And that was something that they kind of get these sponsors in the community. They're kind of like their uncles or aunts, and then that was really special just to see that ceremony. It's done in an Anishinaabe. So that was really moving for me to see that. So thinking also, for me, that's the next generation. What's going to be normal for them? What's going to change for them? So it's just nice to see that.
I think we have a long road ahead of us, but I think with hard work, listening, being honest with each other, and I think following through with commitments that we make towards each other and looking towards the humanity of who we are as people. And going beyond, the visual interpretation of what people think and should, an Indigenous person should be.
What do you think that others might think that an Indigenous person should be?
If you look at me, I'm like this guy, a big Native guy with a braid, and I should be like, speaking to the spirits. But I think, but in my experience and looking at different projects where that have been successful. And looking at how Canadian settlers and First Nations people can work towards success. It's based upon values that are shared, being honest with each other, being open in conversations, making commitments that we can achieve, and following through.
After the break, food, it connects us and also brings us home. A look at how CBC Indigenous helps us learn and celebrate culture and family. That's up next. National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is a time for Canadians to reflect on the past and how to reconcile for the future. For Indigenous peoples in Canada, they are all too aware of the atrocities experienced in the residential and day school systems. And so the team at CBC Indigenous, based here in Winnipeg, endeavored to create a reprieve. Time to Eat is a Canadian Screen Award-winning series that leans into the truth and tradition in Indigenous communities. Tonight, we wanted to bring you a portion of Time to Eat in 3 parts.
Something magical happens when you share a meal. It makes you feel connected.
Cut that little piece off.
To family, friends, and home if you're away. Come along with us as we share recipes, traditions, and celebrate community.
Do you like them?
And you know, there's one thing that brings us all to the table by simply calling it's time to eat. Regardless of how simple a recipe is, it can flood you with childhood memories as soon as you smell it. It can make you feel young again and take you back home.
We'd watch him fillet fish when we were little, and be on either side of the board. I think he's using the same 40-year-old board that he used when we were kids. So when I was a kid, and my dad would have us for the summers, and he was a bachelor, and there were only a few things that he knew how to cook, and he would shake and bake them all because that's what he could do. And he was a big angler and a fisher. He doesn't do that as much, but he used to catch rabbit and take us out fishing, and all of that he would shake and bake for us. I have been in Tyendinaga, Mohawk Territory, my home community, for the last 3 days. It is officially spearfishing season here. I am sitting on our beautiful Bay of Quinte, the place where I spent my summers. I swam in this lake, I learned to fish in this lake, and I love it here. My dad, when I was a kid, taught me how to fish. He taught a piece of fishing line onto the end of a stick, and I caught my first sunfish at the end of our dock when I was probably about 5 or 6, but I was just as excited as when I speared my first fish the other night. This is Trey. Our dads are BFFs, so he more or less had to take us out. I don't know if he really wanted to, but I'm sure he's going to enjoy it.
We'll at least get a couple anyways, so.
Fingers crossed.
When I was just a little guy with my dad, I don't know, he always went when I was younger, so I wanted to go with him. Couldn't go till I was older enough to fit into some waders. When I was about 13, I think, 14, my grandfather would take me to the rivers. We'd poke around.
In Kanyageha, Skagaraxo means pickerel, which means they have one bad eye. Pickerel are notoriously photosensitive and generally found in the deeper waters. We have to wait until it gets really, really dark tonight in order to spear them. An even bigger one. Trey got one.
Back shot. Not very good.
Oh, Trey got another one. Oh, boy.
All right, Candace. This is your Skagaraxon right here. Have your spear kind of extended out a little bit so you got more length.
So where should I get him?
Right behind the eyeball.
Right behind his eyeballs?
Yeah. Ready? Make sure you get him good.
Yes. Oh, did I get him?
Yep. Keep it down. Nice shot.
Yeah.
Nice shot.
Couldn't have got him any better.
Nice shot. That was a beauty shot.
Thanks, guys.
Nice.
Your first fish?
Feels pretty good. That's all I need to get, though.
That was awesome. That was all
Thanks,
teamwork
Trey.
there. Nice.
Awesome.
You ever been spearing on a boat, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, his dad did it.
Yeah. Pretty good, eh?
Yeah, not bad.
I remember as a kid watching my dad fillet all the fish, all the pickerel that he'd catch. And a lot of times he'd do it for people in the community who couldn't fish for themselves so that he could share it. And one of the favorites, one of the delicacies of the pickerel is the pickerel cheek. And a lot of people say it tastes like a scallop. It's a little meatier. So my dad would collect all the cheeks from all the pickerel that he'd filleted and save them all, and so we could have a big feed when there was enough of them.
I like them always. Like pan fried, like this here.
Yeah.
Or when I had a bad stomach, I would broil them. So there was less fat.
Yep.
And of course, deep frying them.
And then when we were little, you used to shake and bake a lot of stuff, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, that was the extent of my cooking repertoire.
Because you could just throw that meat in the bag with this.
Yep.
Some has skin and some doesn't.
Yeah. I always leave the skin on.
You leave the skin on?
Yep.
Why do you leave the skin on?
Makes it a little crispy.
Which one do you want? That one. Good. Really good. So how was that, Dad? Was it that bad?
Got my Hollywood now. Pretty good.
Agwego ang skani tindi the waka ni ne ang kwat ni gorda. Dan on dia tinu na ro ne ka jok su a kundi na gare ne wange. Etonio don hat ni ang kwat ni gorda.
Sometimes there are things that you take part in that you just don't quite know how or why they started, but you know you like them. So, how do traditions become traditions? And does the origin matter if it means your community comes together?
You might call it Victoria Day, May Long, or the May 2-4 long weekend, but here on Six Nations of the Grand River, it's something different. For more than 150 years, there's been a day dedicated to bread and cheese. Now, I'm a member of the Kettle and Stony Point First Nation, where there is no bread and cheese day. So I'm heading to the Grand River in southern Ontario to see if I can sniff out the history behind the holiday.
It's just a tradition that we were taught as young children, and that's just part of our history and part of our family history as well. They say, well, I got to go to bread and cheese, so.
Janina Hill has been volunteering for more than a decade, bringing smiles to hungry faces.
There's always a competition between people who can be the first in line. Some people will get in line at 10 o'clock, even though we don't start serving it till noon.
So if I'd line up nice and early, is there a chance I could get some bread and cheese?
There's a chance. Just don't come like at 12:30 thinking, or quarter to 1, thinking you're gonna get any.
You know any of the history behind this day and how the tradition started?
No, not really, not me.
The Queen, something with the Queen.
Gave a gift to the natives for helping them.
She wanted to make sure we didn't go hungry.
So how did this become the celebration that it is today? Well, that's a little bit of a mystery. What we do know is that Six Nations people served in the War of 1812 and served well. Grand River members earned a reputation as formidable soldiers, so the Queen gifted them blankets.
Then, popular history has it that sometime in the 1860s, Queen Vicky sent money instead and asked her people to send bread and cheese. Her motives? Also a source of speculation. Some say the food was a one-off, a true recognition of friendship with her allies, the Six Nations. Others, though, say it was a strategic move. Rather than spend a lot on expensive blankets, she chose something much cheaper. The tradition was well entrenched by 1899, 2 years before she died, when a reporter produced a detailed account.
The government provides this gigantic feed once a year, and no less than 600 loaves of bread and 500 pounds of cheese and 100 pounds of biscuits are consumed upon the occasion. The bread is a quarter loaf and the cheese is a good-sized chunk.
124 years later, some things haven't changed. By noon, the line stretches on, and on, and on. From the local arena's back door, down the street, around the block, waiting, waiting, and waiting. And then, the wait is over.
Hi there.
Hi.
Thank you.
Within 2 hours, 9,000 loaves and 9,000 pieces of cheese are gone, and I'm left chewing over the day's deeper significance.
Bread and cheese is an example of how that relationship can be not so fraught or not so toxic and not so complicated. Sometimes it can be joyful.
Down the road is the old council house built in 1863. Historian Rick Montour tells me it was here the traditional Six Nations, also known as the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Council, sat until 1924. That's when the Canadian government removed them from power and when the Crown Six Nations relationship started to go sour. But it's also where the first documented distribution of bread and cheese took place in 1874.
History is kind of caught up with us. People disregarded First Nations claims to sovereignty, our very existence, our languages, all those sorts of things, and we're fighting back, and we're here to tell that story. The story that was never meant to be told 100 years later. We're still doing it.
Especially in the world of Indigenous politics and in the world of Indigenous current affairs, it's easy to get weighted down with the heaviness of that burden. But on a day like today, you can just forget about all that. You can forget about the conflict. You can forget about the difficulties and the intergenerational trauma that impacts you in your daily life. And you can just have fun. And there's something beautiful and uncomplicated about that.
But before I leave, there's one more burning question I need answered.
How do you guys like to eat your bread and cheese? You just eat it straight out?
Straight, right off the block.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Do some people take it home, make a grilled cheese, maybe?
No. I don't think I've ever seen anybody make their bread and cheese home.
I do like to take my bread and cheese home.
So there's some debate.
I'm the straight up, just old school type. Take a big bite of the bread, the hunk of the cheese, and enjoy.
How do you like to eat the bread and cheese?
Oh, both hands.
Add the water little by little.
It's a way a recipe can be made without any measuring tools aside from skilled hands. The sense of knowing just how much to mix or add.
Hot water.
And passing on that knowledge from one generation to the next is what keeps traditions alive.
If there's ganat kue, you know it's Sunday in Kahnawake. Restaurants are busy serving this staple meal, but I've never made it before.
Whatever you're boiling, you always still pinch yourself.
So today, my mom is showing me her recipe.
First thing of all, we're gonna boil the water 3/4 of a way with a little pinch of salt on high. In the meantime, we're gonna get our other ingredients ready. And of course, we're gonna make some sausages because we are poor, we don't have steak.
Just doing our weekly cornbread prep, and I came in at 5 this morning. I made 200 cornbread.
Cornbread isn't just a family thing. Most restaurants in the community have it on their menu. How do you make your cornbread?
So I do my my mixture of the masa and oatmeal, and then kidney beans. I drain them and mix it all, and then I bind it all with hot water, and I just form it into the cornbread. Well, we boil pots by pots, so there's about 20 cornbread in the pot. We usually have about 4 pots going, and I have a giant pot on the stove right now that has 50 in there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
In fact, this is the store's busiest day of the week. The takeout window is non-stop.
This is the way we used to make it. I was taught how to make it.
How do you know when it's the right consistency?
When there's no water. See? And this is really hot, so don't go and touch it with your hands. This is the secret, okay? Cold water on your hands, okay? Before I touch the cornbread.
Look how beautiful it is. We made our cornbread using corn that was grown in the community.
See, look, it's really.
But most people in Kahnawake today use masa and oats from the grocery store.
We need land to plant corn, beans, and squash. But it's not just land, because you also need the knowledge systems to be able to do that. And then you also need the people to do different parts of the work, you know. So colonization has severely impacted that by removing us from traditional territories, stealing land, not honoring agreements. The fact that today, in reality, people are eating this food and celebrating its cultural significance means that in our minds, it remains important.
So we like a lot of gravy, so we're making a big thing of gravy here. We use the tea, and it just gives extra flavor to, it's a secret ingredient. Okay, gonna see what that's your job.
I think this is the most gravy I've ever made.
Perfect gravy.
There is a revival of traditional food practices. A not-for-profit movement is working on initiatives to promote food sovereignty. They planted a garden with traditional white corn, beans, and squash.
We're volunteers in our community that are trying to bring back our foods from the past and to regrow it in our community and to have nutritious food and healthier food, organic food, and also to show the next generation how this is done.
It's a variety that was here in Kahnawake a long time ago.
Stephen McCumber is one of the knowledge keepers involved with the garden. You won't find masa in his cornbread, but you might find berries, hickory nuts, or pecans. Talking a little bit about cornbread, what do you like about it?
What I like about it, wow. It brings a lot of childhood memories, because I remember a long time ago in the different neighborhoods in Kahnawake, there was different people, and in fact, a lot of it was older ladies that made cornbread, and people went there, they had little pails, and they went to buy cornbread. I think they were maybe about 50 cents a cake at that time. I would encourage everybody, if they're able to, you know, to plant what they can. You know, we got to bring back the backyard gardens. I don't really believe in lawns. I believe that you could have a garden instead of a lawn. You can't eat your lawn, but you can eat your garden.
I had this new appreciation for cornbread. It was a lot easier than I expected to make, and it just, even though it's a simple recipe, it just reminds me of home. And I think that rings true for a lot of our community members and makes sense why this food has been so resilient over the years.
And we want to thank our friends from CBC Indigenous who are based here in Winnipeg for putting together Time to Eat. You can stream it anytime you like on CBC Gem. So here's a quick look at your 7-day forecast now. We're looking at a 16-degree high in Winnipeg. Southwest winds gusting to 40. Not as windy as it was today, but still breezy. Below seasonal for the rest of the work week. A risk of frost into Friday and Saturday. Keep that in mind if you have any plants that are still outside. And back up to 19 for next Monday. And that is our program for this Monday. We leave you tonight with more from the events marking National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in both Winnipeg and in Brandon today. Thank you so much for being with us. We will see you again tomorrow at 6. Have a great evening.